Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy. And this is just, it's a ramble that has no oracles in it. Could be a shamanic ramble, an ancestor ramble. After doing the Celebrate Your Path spread with the Vintage Wisdom cards, and they gave me, the final card was ancestors, and I'm sure I still have, for where is my path taking me was the ancestors. And so that was curious to me, and I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. I always figure these things will just unravel in their own time, or re-ravel, or whatever, unfold. So then I happen to be today at work, so I have a security guard job, and it's not, on Sundays, it's not very intense. It's just kind of sitting there keeping an eye on things, and you are allowed to bring some stuff in. And so I had my Alpha Smart Neo, and I was going to do some very business-like stuff on it. This is a device where you just type. It's not a laptop. There's no memory. What it does is it records your keystroke. Very simple, very light, very portable, and I love it. And so I took it along with the expectation that I would be doing some stuff more for my classes. And there were some things that needed to be cleared out. You can erase files, so I erased some files, and I was going back over some stuff, and came to file number 2. File number 2. So file number 2 was a shamanic journey that I did back in April, and apparently just never downloaded it onto my computer, never recorded it on my computer. So it's still sitting in here. And I'm going to read you from the from my Neo what I had written. And I do think it relates, you know, so I came upon this and I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is ancestor stuff. And then when I got home and I looked online, I had a comment from from Lisa at the Tarot Alchemist saying, well, maybe it has to do with ancestral healing. And it's like, yeah, maybe it does. Maybe it does. That's what it was starting to look like. It was just, you know, all of the things started to fall into place. Not that it really totally makes sense in terms of my life path, but, you know, it kind of added some pieces to a puzzle that I'll go into a little bit more. I think that this journeying that I did here was actually either as a result of a spread by Anya at her channel Blossom Fae, maybe. But I just remember that it was not a random sort of, oh, I think I'll journey today. That it was in relation to something. There was some kind of cue in a spread that was going around, or a tarot tag or something. Okay. And it's called Gifts from the Ancestors. I know that was a spread, I'm sure. Gifts from the Ancestors. So I just noted here that Dolphin took me, and when I say that, that means that I kind of requested that Dolphin take me on the journey, or show me whatever there was to show. Just show me whatever there was. So it says, we came up in a winter environment that faded to a rocky shore at the base of a cliff. So I remember this looking very sort of, maybe not quite as deep as a fjord, but very fjordish kind of things. Like there's a rocky shore and then it's like whoosh, way up to a cliff. And so I immediately said, this is my Scandinavian roots. I actually have a lot of Swedish in me. I picked up a smooth pebble But there was this notion of getting gifts from them. So, in other words, so I was going to pick up a petal, maybe as a keepsake or something. But then there was like, well, I'm supposedly, it's gifts from the ancestors. Supposedly I'm supposed to receive a gift. And then it says, all right, so there's this notion of getting gifts from them. The silly thing is they are poor. My ancestors are poor. They have nothing to give. That's part of the, in terms of material aspects, material things, a talisman or something, it's like they're poor. They're living in primitive conditions. So I wasn't necessarily seeing that so much as feeling it in the environment. That if I were to go up onto those cliffs, that I would come across just people scraping by in a fairly hostile environment. So this is like, as far as ancestors, is like going way back, way back, to where probably everyone was struggling. So it says, a redheaded girl comes across the beach and presses one flat metal circle in my palm, and then just turns around and goes back. It's like I remember she kind of trots up to me, and doesn't make eye contact, presses this thing into my hand, turns around, and trots back. And there's like a trail or whatever up the cliff. So she's just gone. She just came. She's, yeah, you want something? Here. And she was, I don't know, 10 or 12, something like that. So yes, it goes back the way she came without ever looking at me directly. I decide that that's it. I decide that's it. Well, that's probably kind of like, well, that's probably all I'm going to get, and that's okay. My journeys are sometimes very short, and I don't judge that. That's fine. But it doesn't quite seem right to return to Dolphin. And this is again, these are just my feelings. It's like I'm standing there, and I never really look at this thing in my hand. So I'm just standing there thinking, okay, well, I'm on the shore, so I think this is it for here, so what do I do? It didn't seem, like I said, it didn't seem right to, like, return to water or return to the Dolphin. That is my journeying companion most times. So it's like, it's similar to a dream. It's like the minute I think this, but I'm not supposed to return to Dolphin, I'm immediately like flying. I'm immediately flying, and my perception is that I'm on the back of a seagull. We rise up so that I see the barrenness and wide, unpeopled expanses of this country. Maybe this is Scotland, not Sweden. I didn't know. It was just like, there was no sign on the land saying Scotland, Sweden. But it was treeless. Anyway, I think that the gift I've received, so this is me intellectualizing, I think that the gift I've received is being comfortable in such expanses and such solitude, which is a great gift, and I love it. The gull dives, and I find myself in a boat of rowers. And there's no sense of where shore is. Boat of men, pulling on the oars. And I said like a Viking boat, but I wasn't seeing the outside of it. I was mainly just seeing the people inside. So just a sense of it being a substantial sort of boat. And so, I'm still trying to glean some kind of gift from the ancestors. I think of strength and hardiness, that this is something given, and a comfort with rough rough characters. So in other words, something that I've received, particularly I think from my Swedish ancestors, would be that strength and that hardiness. And then the comfort with rough characters just in general. And I can clarify that in a minute. They seem to notice I'm a woman. Okay, so here, you know, like sometime in the past, a woman just magically appeared in someone's boat. But in the, you know, in the journey, this is what happens. I'm in the boat, delivered by the gulls, so to speak, and just sort of invisibly there. And then suddenly they all sort of notice me. And they seem to notice I'm a woman, and things start to get predatory. So in other words, they're looking at me thinking, oh, you know, how they can use me for their own purposes, their own pleasures, whatever. In which I say, which I'm not going to tolerate, so I jump overboard. It's like, bye relatives, if that's what you are. This is how I deal with you rough characters when you actually get rough. So when I say that I'm comfortable with rough characters, I don't mean people who are abusive by any means. I kind of a no tolerance zone for that. But that has not kept me from being around people, people who appear to be rough, who are not necessarily violent, but who, you know, who are just rough-looking characters. I remember when I was young, my mid-20s, and I was in Los Angeles. I was wanting to get out of Los Angeles, and I made this job leap to a wildlife, what's called Wildlife Way Station, a place where, you know, if people have wild animals illegally or zoos are dissolving or whatever, their animals go to this place. It wasn't terribly big. It's fair size, but not terribly big. Anyway, so I didn't have a car at the time, so a friend, one of my Los Angeles friends, I was from Michigan, so I was, you know, these are all newer friends. She took me to this place where she was going to have to leave me with no means of, you know, no transportation of my own. This was up in the mountains outside of LA. And she looked around at the people who I would be working with, and she said to me, very serious, I can't leave you here. I can't leave you here. My God, look at these people. I can't leave you here. And I was like, you can't take me against my will, you know. So I'm going to do it, and I'm going to stay, you know. It didn't bother me anyway. But I seem to have pretty good radar for people who look rough but are not. I've never had somebody try to take advantage of me. So, you know, I've never had to wrestle myself away from somebody or anything like that. So I jump overboard, and that's the end of it. That's the end of that journey. But one of the things that it got me thinking about with that brief interlude in the boat, in the predatory stuff, and the girl being so subdued, not, you know, like she was kind of oppressed, you know, and just looking down and just giving me this thing and then running on. And this dot connected with the ancestor dot, and it also connected with another dot that kind of started to, it's a dot I would say started to expand. I don't know, was it a month ago? Within the last 2 months anyway. When I was driving home, and there's just a short distance in the evening, I teach in the evening, in the morning and then in the evening, so after my evening class. And for some reason, I don't recall why, I was thinking about this reaction that I tend to have to scenes in movies. where people are getting rescued. Is it always children? I think it is frequently children. And so it's a scene like one of them that I remember. Actually, I think both of the ones that I most vividly remember actually do involve bears. Now, I am, to me, my totem animal, I have an inner bear. I am a bear. So I don't think it's a reaction to bears particularly, but they are the two that I can recall. Well, and then there's a third one I also remember, where I just have a really emotional, deep emotional reaction. I don't tend to have, I do cry during movies, but to have, to the point where you get feeling helpless, that your emotion, you can't hold this emotion back. So one of them was some old TV movie where there was some bear trying to get at some boy who was buried amongst logs, and a dog was was fending off the bear. So I think that's the first time that I remember having this really emotional response to a rescue scene. I'm going to call them rescue scenes. I don't know what else to call them. So there was that. And then there's I think it's a Disney or Pixar movie that was about the girl that wanted to be the archer, and she's redheaded, and I can't remember the name of it because I don't watch movies very often. I don't have a television. I don't buy movies to watch or anything like that. So so the scene when the mother bear is protecting her from another bear? Is it some kind of evil, wicked, long time plaguer of their village or something like that? In any case, again, it's a rescue scene, and in this situation you have that mother energy, and again, it just totally gets to me. If I were to visualize that scene right now I'm talking about, but I'm not really visualizing, I would probably get teary. And then the other one that I was thinking of as I started to explain, the other one was in the Harry Potter movies, and it's the last one, and Bellatrix Lestrange, is that? It's a miracle if I have that correct. Anyway, the evil female character, and she's about to kind of trounce, I don't know that she was going to kill her, but she was going to trounce one of the again, here's redheads, the family of redheaded kids and stuff, and I can't remember anybody's name. Harry Potter is about as good as I can get. Bellatrix Lestrange. I almost had it. I almost visualized it. In any case, the mother of that clan, who we've always heard throughout the books about what a powerful witch she is, but we only ever see her in her mother role, kind of controlling her children to the extent that she can. I almost got it again, but it's not there. It's like one of those things that, you look at it directly and it's poof, it's gone. Ron, I'm remembering Ron now. Ron's family. Anyway, and so she suddenly engages with this Bellatrix Lestrange. And in the book, got to me then, but out in the movie, totally got to me. And so there are these kinds of things that it's like, where is that coming from? Where is that emotional hook? Or, why is that in there? If there's, and I've always thought, well, maybe there's something in my childhood I've blocked, but if I blocked it, I've blocked it pretty darn good. I'm not aware of anything. It would have had to have been long, like wee child and outside of something that was outside of my parents' control, and why I wouldn't have told my parents at the time if something happened to me is beyond me. So, so I was remembering some of those moments as I was driving home, this happening rapidly in my head. And I'm thinking, all right, so I wonder if in some past life, and I don't know which part of that scenario I would be, if I was, the helpless person who was saved, or maybe who wasn't saved, and that's why it's so emotional. Or if I was the helpless person and saw a loved one die trying to save me. Or if I was, the mother or whatever trying to save something or someone. And again, there's a sense of tragedy there, even though in these movies, of course, everything comes up, but there's a gripping sense of imminent tragedy when I'm watching it. And so I'm wondering if, there was some kind of scene like that in fact resulted in failure. It ended up being not Hollywood. And so yes, so there was that question in my mind. And I guess it, at that time, I started just kind of thinking about, well, maybe there's something further back, and that's why it's all very blurry and it's not very present in my life that I'm aware of. So then I came back across this from April, this shamanic journey and the situation in the boat. And so then I'm thinking maybe, and having just done the path reading, where there was that, the ghost bride, and the whole notion of purity, and, why would that be? Why would that be part of my path? At the time, I was thinking, okay, it's my Virgo moon, and it could be. So all of this is pure speculation. I just sort of, again, I'm seeing the dots starting to line up, maybe. So maybe, part of the response, has to do with a rape scenario. I remember I went through a phase, was it at the beginning of this year, where I was watching, or may have been last year even, where I was watching a lot of, what is it, Gene? The thing where you spit in a tube, you collect your saliva in a tube and you send it off, and then they give you your ancestry, like ancestry.com, and I can't remember, there's another one that has to do something in me. Anyway, there's at least 2, if not 3 of them doing this now. And so I was watching, because it's kind of fun to see, where people are from or not from, and how it appears visually or not, and how it doesn't jive with what they know and stuff. And so I just would watch them randomly, and then I started watching the African American people who were doing it, and that was really fascinating to see where they were, or where the current gene science says that they are likely from. And there's one young woman who got quite emotional when, and this is most people, they had some European ancestry of some kind in there, and it didn't surprise them. And kind of what doesn't come out in these, or these people maybe are not aware of, is that, it could go back before the slavery days. It could go back further than that. Is that likely? I don't know, but it's a possibility. I have ancestry from, I believe it's Morocco. I don't think it came up on my ancestry DNA, but it came up on my brother's. But again, this was before the United States. Because it's actually in the tails. This is my Scottish heritage, actually, way in the back. So the Scottish clan, my mother learned about it when she went and visited Scotland and made some inquiries. So she knew about it before we had the DNA test, and I think it came up with my brother. So I was watching some of these, and one young woman got quite emotional, and she wasn't expecting it when she found out how much of her background, her genetics were European, because the assumption then is, and I think it's a totally valid assumption, that the ancestor at some point in the past must have experienced, and not too distant past, must have experienced rape. So here I'm, looking back at this and connecting it to ancestor. Maybe I didn't take it terribly seriously, or that funny episode in the boat, dropped by a seagull, and then I just, I'm like, I'm out of here. This thing's, it's going to get weird and violent. I'm gone. But that, was like, well, as women, chances are, I would be surprised, and I would think it would be fairly rare for there to be a straight lineage back to, I don't know how much caveman days you'd have to go, when there was not some forced sexual encounter. It hasn't been that long that, and in some countries, even, countries we think of as developed, a man can't legally rape his wife. That's not a concept. And I don't know if it was the 60s or the 70s here in the U.S. where it was finally a legal concept that a man could rape his wife. So now I have a question mark in my mind in terms of whether part of that feeling of tragedy in those situations might have to do with somehow, and why this would stick in our oral, whatever you want to call it. I don't have language for it. This thing would stick, this incident would stick from generation to generation. I have no idea, but and I could be drawing incorrect conclusions. Like I said, it's an unfolding journey. So maybe I'll learn more that will have me feeling more definite. Maybe there's more than one thing. Maybe there was that rescue scene and the possibility of rape are two different things. I don't know. Why that stuff would sit with me and not other members of my family, I don't know. That's another big question. Why me? If it is kind of riding with me for some reason, then there's that question too. Well, why? You know, not that I would wish it on another relative, but you know, why? Or maybe other relatives are also carrying it, and I just don't realize it. So there we go. There's my reflection on ancestors, ancestral trauma, violence, women. What else? Shamanic journeying, little bits and pieces of clues. You know, here it is. All right, everybody. This was a little longer than I thought. I wasn't sure how long I'd have to ramble to kind of connect all of the dots. If you stuck with me, feel free to give any impressions in the comments, any of your more experienced, I don't know, ancestor experiences, you know, how that would help you or me interpret these gleanings from here and there. Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear them. And, you know, if you want to do a video on how you've connected those kinds of dots, please let me know and I will check it out. I'm very curious. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.